Trend alert, social media is buzzing with what apparently is the latest hot accessory, cross necklaces. I'm wearing mine today. Influencers, celebrities, White House staff, and more have been seen donning the jewelry. The accessories seem to have a renewed sense of popularity on red carpets, social media, and even at protests attended by high-ranking Democrats. Trendy pop star Sabrina Carpenter was wearing one in her music video for the song Please, Please, Please. And music rising star Chappell Roan wore a sizable one to the MTV Video Music Awards last year.
Meanwhile, recent Gallup polling shows young Americans are becoming less religious. So why are young Americans recently sporting crosses despite historically low religious rates?
I don't see this as a new trend, to be honest. Madonna had crosses all over herself back in the 80s, so pop stars wearing crosses is nothing new. But what I found interesting about this was the entire New York Times profile about cross necklaces, as if they had just discovered Christianity existed. I mean, the headline was like, hot new accessory, cross necklaces are all over the White House. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of Christians working for the Trump administration, and they like to openly espouse their faith. It's weird to me.
I do think it's culture, sort of like, to your point, the New York Times culture, maybe culture somewhere else in the country is clashing at this point,
right,
and just figuring each other out a little bit. But there's something about the rates of historical or the current religious affinity that folks have in this country and across not just the United States but North America, Europe, Latin America. Religion as a devoted thing you do is going down. But I think what's changing now perhaps is the idea that the institution itself, the church itself, going to church has been declining for years. But people are leaving institutions of all stripes at the moment, whether it's the federal government, whether it's academia, whether it's churches, but looking to folks online, looking to influencers, looking to maybe outsiders to tell them something about how they could behave and dress and connect. And I wonder if perhaps part of this is, with the influencer culture rising, it gives folks a chance to access this differently than just going to church and attending a service in that way.
One of the things that we've been talking about on the show of late is this issue of declining religiosity, especially among young people. And one of the things that I found just in my own experience going to Mass and talking to folks my age is that the ones who are interested in religion like a really traditional version of religion, whether it's the Catholic Church, Orthodoxy, Anglican, which some people refer to as sort of Catholic light. And it's really because they feel like it offers them something that the culture doesn't currently right now, because culture has become so secular in the United States. So you're kind of seeing this division where you have one sector of young people becoming less religious than ever, but the ones who are really interested in like the 2,000-year-old theology and the very traditional movements and the sort of Gothic architecture and all of these things that they feel they don't get in other parts of their life.
Yeah, I think that's true. I also think that there are people in the left part of the political sphere, at least, who are finding some new ways to engage with religion or with spirituality in general in this moment, because it's we're in a tense, anxious world, right? You wake up tense, you read the news, you're tense. You're having stress and tension in your life at work, whether it's economic or whether it's political, and finding some peace, which is a large part of what you do perhaps at a service, is a welcoming thing. My fiance was a very devoted Catholic for years and kind of left the church largely over some of the policies and the doctrine, but has come back recently, and we're attending services every week. And I'm not very religious myself, but I can really understand the value of being in that place and having that presence and not looking at your phone and not looking at social media and absorbing something and thinking about it and having some quiet in your life. I wonder if part of that, certainly for the folks on the left who may have left religion but come back to it for that reason, that trend might increase.
Yeah, I went to confession recently, and the priest said something very useful, which is Mass is the 1 hour a week where you are separate from the crazy things happening in the city, and it's basically a sanctuary for people, and you should make use of that. And I thought that was really sage advice. One of the other things I wanted to bring up in this read, we talked about Sabrina Carpenter wearing a cross necklace in a recent music video. And you've got to let me tee off on this one, Dan, because I think one of the things that does frustrate Christians is when they see these pop stars sort of almost appropriating the faith. And I'm not like a cultural appropriation person, but it is the case that these are obviously religious symbols. And Sabrina Carpenter, in a previous music video, Feather, had actually desecrated a Catholic altar in New York. She had put all of these idolatry items on the altar. She was dancing in her brief underwear on the altar in the sanctuary of the church. And when pressed about it, said, well, Jesus was a carpenter. referring to her fan base as Carpenters. And it was actually deemed such an offense to the church that they had to have a special mass where they basically re-sanctified the altar, and the priest who approved the filming of the music video ended up being demoted for his decision to do that. So for her to now do a new music video wearing the cross, I'm like,
you're not buying it?
Get that off. Take it off.
Well, if I could see out for a second, that's a very fair point, by the way. And I think that doing that sort of thing just to get attention is probably not the best way to go about it. But I would say for liberals sometimes, and especially for liberals with faith, true faith in their life, if they see some of the really devastatingly mean politics that come out sometimes on the right, especially on immigrants, and some of the rhetoric that comes out on immigrants while you're wearing the cross. And you can be tough on immigration, you can be tough on the border, you can have a policy that involves deportations even, right? But some of the rhetoric, some of the way we talk about people as poisoning the blood of this country when they're themselves fleeing the cartel and just trying to find a way to live their own lives, seems very anti-Christian to me, and I think there's a fair critique of those on the right who proudly display the cross, but at the same time do some very un-Christian things.
I think that's a very simplistic way of talking about politics and faith and the intersection, because there's often this rhetoric that I hear from people about how Christians are just supposed to be nice all the time. And it's really an oversimplification of the faith. I mean, yes, you are supposed to be nice to people, but that doesn't mean that if someone spits in your eye, you're not allowed to defend yourself, right?
Yeah.
Or that if someone does something that's counter to your faith, that you're not allowed to defend yourself. And I think, unfortunately, there is this narrative around Christianity in particular that does not often get talked about in regards to other religions, whether it's Judaism, Islam, Sikh, Hindu, whatever it is. Where Christians are just supposed to kind of sit down and shut up and take whatever's offered to them, and they're not allowed to ever go on the offensive against things that they find problematic in society, culture, politics. And it's really strange to me, the double standard.
So here's what I'll say. I think that you're right about that, and I don't think that you can apply that as a broad brush and say just sit down, turn the other cheek, welcome all in, open borders, right? I'm not suggesting that. What I'm suggesting is that we live in a world that's imperfect, right? We're going to make imperfect choices. People are going to be imperfect. But if you really believe in both fairness, in finding ways to help people live a better life, and you also need to be tough sometimes when someone spits in your face, that's part of life as well, that's great. But the standard should be high to do it in a way that is fair, is honest, and does not leverage other biases and bigotry to achieve your ends. And sometimes it tips the other way. You can be tough. You don't have to turn the other cheek every time. But there's a tipping line I think Republicans and some conservatives go off a little too far on.
All right, that's going to do it for us today on Rising, actually. Spicy one to end on. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.